If you are not familiar with Kayse Melone, we are going to play you a quick intro clip so that you have an idea of where she is coming from.
Again, like, this is not a reflection how I think that everyday Christians are somehow more responsible for the occupying apartheid state of the state of Israel in relation to the ethnic cleansing that is being attempted regarding the Palestinians. I think everyone in the United States is complicit in a lot of different ways. But the institution and the ideology of Christianity is being used to justify, I think, in a lot of ways, the expenditure of tax dollars to support the statehood of Israel at all costs, and particularly encouraging the evangelical voting bloc to vote for leaders who support the statehood of Israel at all costs, even genocidal costs. Because at its core, Christian Zionism is, just for like a brief summary, it's the biblical prophecy that Christians have and how they have a religious obligation to support the Israeli government unconditionally in order to fulfill that prophecy, in order to bring about the end times. I talk about this a lot on my channel as well, about how when I was raised in the evangelical Christian church, the end times were talked about a lot. I got a lot of sermons, a lot of lectures in Bible class about Armageddon and the book of Revelation. And without fail, that always does bring up the question of the statehood of Israel, okay? Because I think it is the most violent and immoral manifestation of the dominant cultural ideology of Christianity. We can talk about, again, the ways that individuals hold themselves back, and like women subjugate themselves for the sake of men, and how you're believing in a fairy tale, all of these really important conversations. But at the end of the day, the most drastic and the most horrific result of all of those beliefs is Christian Zionism, is the genocidal justification of the statehood of Israel.
Jen, would you like
to? So guys, I came across Kayse's video. Again, you guys know I never remember where I find things. I don't know where it pops up what. I can't even keep track of it. And anything where it's an atheist will always get my attention, because we need to sort of get, and the fact that somebody had to deconstruct that and get to that as I deconstructed Zionism, and then it all just seemed like, I don't know. I feel like she and I were meant to meet. So guys, Kayse Melone is a cultural commentator, and you can find her YouTube channel at Kayse Melone. We will put all of the links in our description. So welcome, Kayse. It is nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you guys. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great. Yeah.
So, where did you come from? Because you definitely hit something on the algorithm recently that now and I even saw you did a video about where did all these new people come from? And so something must have happened. Something must have happened. Where are you? Like, who are you? Where did you come from? You know, like that. And I am someone who, just so you know, I'm going to say very briefly, born and raised in a very Jewish insulated community, raised very Zionist, and it's taken me 20 years to deconstruct. Now, I was always an atheist. That I never had to deconstruct. So I really just had to deconstruct my love for the state of Israel and go through that process. So yeah, so tell me where you came from and how come I'm all of a sudden seeing you on YouTube.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I was really grateful when you guys reached out, because I saw that we were having very similar conversations. I do commend you for both kinds of deconstruction that you just kind of touched on there. It's something that I kind of talk about a lot on my platform, which is that I wasn't just growing up indoctrinated in evangelical Christianity. I grew up indoctrinated in conservative Christianity, and there was a political nature to that quote unquote faith-based community. And so I kind of come at it from both angles whenever I can, because I think they are intertwined conversations and they are really important. As far as where I came from, I grew up here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay, so you're in Tulsa. Okay.
Yeah, one of the multiple. I mean, our population is only 400,000 people the last time I looked, and we have multiple evangelical mega churches. Okay, so it is a stronghold here. We are in the Bible Belt, and I grew up going to the Bible-based fundamentalist private high school affiliated with one of those mega churches. So I was in deep. I mean, you want to talk about all of the stereotypes of white evangelical Christianity. I hit them. I checked those boxes. And I deconstructed. I stopped calling myself a Christian around 21 years old. And over the last, I'm 33 now, so 12.
What was it? What was it? Like, so you grew up and you like, like when you were in, Christian high school and all that, did you believe? Like, okay, so you believed, it wasn't just you were forced to go to that. Okay. So what was, I mean, you didn't just all of a sudden wake up at 21 and be like, yeah, I'm not with that anymore. Something happens, right?
Yeah. And then one thing I like to talk about, I mean, my channel is very much, a lot of the conversation is about deconstruction. So one thing I always like to say is it really looks different for everyone. For me, I was a very studious academic mind, and I very much, the logic of the infallibility of the Bible just broke down one day. I have like a capital M moment when I was walking at my college campus, and I realized that I wasn't a Christian anymore. And there are a lot of factors that I think go into that. One of them being, I went out of state to a public university. And I think that separation from all of my, closest friends who I spent every day with, reading the same books, consuming the same materials, really allowed me to start to question reality. And it was very intense of a transition away. And I think what's interesting now is that I spent 10 years kind of from the theological or the philosophical questions of deconstructing from the religious aspect. And then in the past couple of years, and particularly this past year, started looking at the political side of how I was raised, right? Not that I mean, I've been, going to protests and calling myself a feminist all of this last decade, but really taking a look on what the actual processes of propaganda-based indoctrination looks like and studying the rise of Christian nationalism, etc. And so what's interesting now is I get a lot of feedback from my comment on my platform about people who are questioning their faith-based upbringing from originally the political perspective, because they don't like how the evangelical church that they grew up in is encouraging them to sway along a lot of these political conversations. And so they're kind of coming at it from the opposite end of the conversation, which I think is really interesting. One thing I do always try to make the caveat of, which I'll just do for your audience as well, is that I do very much recognize that there is a multiplicity of the human experience. I recognize that there are progressive Christians doing wonderful, amazing work in support of, the material conditions for all to be improved. And it is, unfortunately, the dominant mainstream Christian narrative aligns more with white evangelicalism. So once Trump got elected again and then sworn in, I mean, I was essentially radical or mobilized in the sense of, okay, well, now I have to talk about this because 80% of white evangelical Christians voted for Trump. And I'm floored. I'm just done.
You see the hypocrisy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You see the hypocrisy in that.
Mm-hmm. The hypocrisy. And I guess to answer your original question about how I kind of maybe came, to 15,000 subscribers or whatever overnight is, I think the conversations I'm having just really resonate with people, and a lot of people are coming to the awareness of these issues. And how one thing I always try to talk about is there is the personal liberation aspect of walking away from high demand religions, but it really, the most harmful manifestations, as I kind of said in that clip that you showed, the most harmful manifestations of this kind of indoctrination end up harming others and promoting hate or division at the very least. And then on the other side of the world, we end up seeing it actually play out on a geopolitical scale.
Yeah, I just think like you had to deconstruct Christian, and then you also, or you're now an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's big. Like there's a lot of people that, realize I'm not with a religion.
Right.
But it is not often. That's why I think I was also so interested in you. It is not often that I come across people that deconstruct God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's usually beyond. like
Mhm.
most people, and I never believed. So I've never had that like it's never been a thought for me. So I'm just very interested, and I didn't realize that there were as many latecomers, I guess, to that party.
Yeah, no, everyone's on a different part of that journey, and which is another reason I try not to be specifically exclusionary when I talk about being an atheist or being non-religious, because there are a lot of people on different parts of
Yep.
their deconstruction. Maybe they still want to hold on to the identity of the Christian label, but they don't adhere to all of it. It's I think there are a lot of issues in like the atheist content creation sphere that obviously I'm new to the game, but I'm kind of trying to track and understand. But yeah, what's interesting is the most recent religious landscape study done by the Pew Research Center showed that 51% of evangelical Christians live in the South, and so does the largest number of atheists, which I think is very indicative of how
Yeah.
polarizing and unhealthy evangelical Christianity is, to the point where it gets people to be like, I want nothing to do with this. Like, I
There's
want
the
to be
most atheists in the South.
by like 1%, but
But
it's
still,
still, yeah. Yeah. So that was interesting.
Well, listen, I appreciate your opinion. It's not a good one, but I appreciate it. Anytime a blonde comes on the show, you got to be nice. But the evangelicals, they love me. They know I'm a great person. And
Mm,
you're probably a terrible person, but I'll have to listen more to what you have to say. Could you talk
well
about
done.
what it was like growing up amongst the church? I think one of the things that people forget is that when you're from the heart, and you're not from the South, you're from the heartland. You're from you're from like a place where the church is the central focus of the community. Whether it's Tulsa, whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's Manhattan, Kansas, it doesn't matter. They're all very similar elements. The only real, what you would call major city, if you want to call it that, within earshot of where you are, is Kansas City. Other than that, it's a very like, yeah, it's farm country, it's Wizard of Oz country and all that, but I don't think people truly understand how much control and how much power the evangelical church truly has in places like the heartland. And if you could elaborate on that and what that experience was like, well, obviously, I think a lot of people would love to hear about that.
First of all, great impression of our dear leader. Second of all, I think you touched on something that, yeah, basically brought me online. And to be clear, I've been very vocal and outspoken about deconstruction for a long time, but it wasn't until we voted Trump back into office that I realized I needed to be more formal about what these conversations were going to look like. And the more I dig, what's really interesting is that I have intuitively known for a long time a lot of the things that the more I research and dig is being proven by the hard facts of how much money has been poured into the religious right in order to, exactly like you said, manipulate the narratives around these communities who aren't as connected to the rest of the world. We don't have as much of a diversity as the coast. We don't have as much interaction with, people from other countries as people do on the coast. It is the heartland. You're exactly right. And there's so much to learn and accept and feel super disheartened about in relation to the money. I mean, starting all the way back with Paul Weyrich and Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell Sr. and Jr., I maintain, have contributed to so much more harm in this world than any individual, like Republican or any president, because they mobilized their church congregations intentionally and with financial backing to get all of those presidents into power, and then worked hand in hand with them. So in that sense, the evangelical institution in this country, I think, is so much more at fault than a lot of people are willing to admit, because nobody wants to attack an individual's faith. And I never want to do that either. I never want to attack an adherent for their personal spiritual transformation, which is honestly none of my business. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at the material results, not excluding Jerry Falwell Sr., if we're going to, bring it back to Christian Zionism, getting a gift of a private jet from the government of Israel. I mean, I'm not sure how much you guys have really looked into Christian nationalism, but it is also very tied into Christian Zionism. And the targeted ads just in the last 10 years of the digitization of communication, nobody's watching local news as much anymore. We're not getting physical newspapers. We're getting our news from our technology. And when you want to talk about these people who are already isolated, my community members out here who are only getting their news from their phone, whenever churches got digitized, okay, and you could start paying your tithe and offering online, like automatic withdrawals. You could start signing up for events. You could start mapping out all of these data points. There are very tried and true, very observable platforms that are farming that data and selling it to Republican leaders. And it has been a very intentional propaganda-based effect. And it breaks my heart, okay, because my parents were 20 and 22 years old when they had me. I don't really feel like I can hold them as accountable for raising me in what they thought was the best environment. They truly did, right? I have to have a lot of grace for that. But you're absolutely right. The seclusion here and then the algorithmic digitization of information has been absolutely exploited. There's so much I can get into on that. But yeah, that's a great point, Peter.